There was an article written about me. What does a tech guy know about mining?
From $1 million to 520
million to 520 million. We've got an existing infrastructure worth over 200 million.
I bought this asset and it only got up 50%, and I missed this one that went up 200%.
Everybody likes to talk about an exit, but we've done it.
The risk of not finding gold isn't really there.
The Warren Buffett principle: when nobody wants it, may not be a bad time to buy it.
You exited $1 billion in 2011 in gold, which was the top of the last cycle. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Market Disruptors Show. Today, I am sitting down with Marc Levy. He is the chairman and CEO of Norsemont Mining, and he's someone I'm really excited to talk to. He is a serial investor, if you will call it that. He's had multiple exits. I think $1 billion in mining company exits, which is just amazing. Of course, you already know I love to learn from other people. I believe that success leaves clues. So I'm excited to sit down with you, Marc, today and see what we can learn from you. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Yeah. So, man, when I was reading through your bio and just the exits that you had, I mean, just what an amazing track record. Definitely someone that I know we can learn a lot from. So I'm excited to talk to you. But for those that haven't really dug into you or haven't read your bio, which I'm sure there's a lot of people haven't, give us a breakdown kind of what you've done, some of the big wins, I guess.
Sure. I mean, I started out, I guess, back in the tech sector in the early days. And we helped build out, I guess, when the internet was starting to get exciting, and we built one of the largest internet service providers in Canada. We took a $20 million company to $1.9 billion, and I worked for a billionaire. So it was kind of nice to mentor from someone with that kind of expertise, knowledge, and experience. And so we rode that for a little while and into, I guess, the tech crash of 2001 and sideways 2003. And based on my the mentors I had, and one of the tech guys I worked for was actually a mining guy as well, and he kind of opened my eyes to the mining sector a little bit in 2003. And I built out a team and decided to take control of a mining company and build my own company, and got involved in the mining sector in late 2003, early 2004. And I founded a company called Norsemont Mining, which we label it Norsemont 1.0. And we did a large deal with a company called Rio Tinto, one of the largest mining companies in the world. We bought a copper deposit from them, and we took it to feasibility and sold that for $520 million to Hudbay Minerals in 2011.
And from $1 million to 520
million to 520 million. So we did pretty good. Our investors made a lot of money. It was a great exit at the peak. Good asset. Over $2 billion gone into the asset by Hudbay to put it in production. One of the largest copper deposits going to production in the world, top 20. And through that, we also saw other opportunities, and we tried to acquire a company that was similar to ours out of Panama called Petaquilla Minerals, which had a very large copper deposit. And we couldn't come to terms with the CEO and the chairman to buy the company. So we ended up, myself and my team, taking a big stake in Petaquilla. And then we instituted, so our director went on the board, my CFO, we took a bit of control of it. And we ended up selling that company for $350 million to Inmet Mining, another large mining company. So that was another exit that we had in 2011. And we also invested in a coal company called Coal Hunter, which acquired some assets in Canada, and we sold that off to Cardero Group for about $57 million. And another company I was a chair of and founder was called Rio Silver. It was a silver deposit in Peru, which we sold off as well. So we exited about $950 million of mining companies in 2011. And I think that was kind of towards the end of the mining cycle. And then we kind of went off looking at other opportunities, and we ventured into oil and gas a little bit. We looked at the crypto space. Obviously, that was quite an exciting space, and because of my background in tech, it made sense. And we took some private investments in some crypto exchanges, and I had the opportunity to meet with Vitalik Buterin, who was the founder of Ethereum, and missed out on being a partner in that. But we got quickly distracted with the cannabis sector, and we learned a lot about cannabis, and we did some research, and we saw that's kind of, our generation, probably yours and mine, our generation of our parents may have had the experience of alcohol becoming legal, and for us, that was our prohibition is cannabis. And so we got very involved and did a lot of research. And I'm one of the 3 founders that put together and took public and funded a company called Aurora Cannabis. It was one of the larger cannabis companies in the world. And our investors that got in very early alongside us did incredibly well. There was a big opportunity. I mean, we rolled that up to about a $16 billion market cap, and now it's unfortunately trading down at around $1 billion and change. So, the whole sector is corrected, but we did get involved in also one of my shells. We took public Curaleaf, which was one of the largest IPOs in the cannabis sector, and we got involved in several other U.S. Cannabis plays. And we liked the sector. We thought there was opportunity there, but maybe things moved a little too quick. And about a year ago, we rebuilt our mining team and stepped back into the mining sector, thinking that we need exposure to precious metals and metals. And mining sector had been dead for almost a decade here, and it was time to see a comeback. And then there was obviously some economic drivers that we'll talk about, I'm sure.
Yeah. Wow. What a career you've had. That's just so amazing. What I love is a couple things. One, how you've been able to kind of move from company to company and they're in different industries. So you went from tech into a copper mine. So you kind of jumped into a space you didn't really know a lot about.
Exactly.
And you jumped in with both feet. You talked about like assembling a team. And then you talk about kind of taking your team from project to project. Is that kind of how it works? Like you've got the right people and now you've just kind of continued to duplicate success with them?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've got from a technical perspective in mining, we've built out a really good team. And like you said, I jumped into copper. There was an article written about me. What does a tech guy know about mining? The only way to learn is to surround yourself with experts. And so I surrounded myself with top-notch experts in the world and in Canada in the copper space, and engineers, geologists, learned from them. And like a sponge, I soaked up everything there is about copper to the point where when I do presentations to large funds out of Europe, they would argue, are you a geologist or an engineer? And I would have to kind of say, well, after you make the investment, I'll give you the answer to your question, because I wouldn't want to insult their intelligence and let them know, well, I was coached by really good engineers and geologists, but I'm really not.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I've surrounded myself with a great team in the mining sector. And then we have our own internal team here that I've worked with, which we call our family, where some of my partners, we've co-invested in each other's ventures along the way as well. So we were well capitalized internally. And then, of course, we've got externally all these teams we worked with over the years in the mining sector that we've reassembled now. And we also have teams from tech sector that we work with. Now they become investors in our deals because obviously they don't have the technical expertise from the resource sector perspective.
Yeah, that's awesome. Anybody who's been watching this channel knows when I dig in, I believe success leaves clues. And one thing I look for at other companies, specifically when I was really analyzing a lot of crypto companies as they're coming up and gold miners today, is I always look for the team. I've always said over and over that I don't believe a good team would go to a bad project, right? And so somebody with like a track record like yours, you've been able to duplicate success by kind of keeping that core team. And so as an outside investor for me, I think that's so important because like someone with your track record, I couldn't imagine you would go to a bad company to try to ruin that track record, right?
Yeah, no, that would make sense.
So I invest with the team, and I like that your philosophy is kind of the same, that you're also investing with your team as well. I want to get into, obviously you were in tech, copper, silver, cannabis, and now you've rotated back into gold. I want to talk about the cycles and why you see that. I want to talk about the project that you're working on right now. I want to learn a little bit about that. We'll get into maybe some other stuff like uranium and Bitcoin. But before we do, I want to just ask this question. I think a lot of investors that are listening to this might find this helpful. So you mentioned that before Aurora, you had met Vitalik Buterin from Ethereum, the developer of Ethereum, and you had a chance to invest into that company. And it was kind of like, Ethereum or cannabis, right? And you decided cannabis, and you did amazing with it. I mean, you said it came from 16 billion down to 8, or I'm sorry, down to 1. But I mean, you took it from $1 million to $1 billion. So like, I mean, obviously, like we got to focus on that. So 1, it went to 16 and it's back to 1. So that's tough. But also you missed out on the opportunity to go into Ethereum, which could have made billions over there. My question is, as an investor, how do you handle the mindset of that? Like, does that eat away at you that you lost Ethereum? Does it eat away at you that Aurora went so high and has fallen back down? Or do you really stay focused on what you have?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always thankful for what I have. I feel blessed and I feel that I'm lucky, despite the fact, we create our luck as well. We create our circumstances. It would be tough for me and to be dishonest with you and say, hey, I don't regret, not doing Ethereum, because I would have made $1 billion on Ethereum and probably would have another notch on my bank account, and would have been fun too, because I do like the crypto space and believe in it as you do. But things happen for a reason. And, I'm very thankful, my investors in the end made money with me. That's my job. Ultimately, that's how I look at my work, is to take people's money, invest it wisely alongside our team, and create value and create a win for them. And so, Aurora is a success because we funded it at 10 cents, at 25 cents, 85 cents, $1. It went to $16. So all my guys had the opportunity to create an exit, make a lot of money. Yes, it's come off recently, but it traded, more than any bank in Canada, Aurora. So it was a big win for all of us. Was it as big a win as Vitalik and Ethereum would have been? Absolutely not. That would have been the biggest win ever. But you know what? I'm a happy guy. I got 2 healthy kids. We do well. Our investors do well, and they're happy with our returns, and they support us through thick and thin. And ultimately, I'm just always thankful for what I have. I'm never stressing for what I could have had. A lot of guys, beat themselves up on, I didn't get 100% off the table versus 50. But I could have got $10 a share and I sold the company for 8. It's like, okay, well, you get to reload and reinvest with your investors in a new deal. So, we're always thankful, and ultimately, we've had a good winning streak over the last 15 plus years, 16 years. And we've got good support from our investors, and hopefully we can add to that. And definitely, it's something I think about, but not, of course I'd lie to you if I don't regret it. Of course I would regret it, but you know what? Everything was a learning experience, and I love learning too. I knew nothing about cannabis. I don't smoke cannabis. Matter of fact, funny story is, just to sidetrack us, is, somebody famous would come in the room and I'm with Terry and with our CEO and president with Aurora, and they would, Mark, didn't you have that call? And I'm like, oh, Q, I got to leave because he's going to pass something around that I'm not going to want to smoke. And he'll think I'm a narc or something. So it's like somebody famous comes in, I get to meet them, and it's like, okay, Mark, get the fuck out of here now. It's like, you're not going to smoke it, then leave the room. Yeah. So, but I learned so much about it medically is what drove me into the interest of cannabis, actually seeing what can be done for people and helping people versus traditional medicine. So it was a great learning experience, and definitely broadened my horizons and a different perspective for cannabis than I did before I started.
Yeah, I love that, and I appreciate you sharing that. Just I talk to so many people, and I see so many comments where I bought this asset and it only got up 50%, and I missed this one that went up 200%, and I see that all the time. And I want people to have that perspective that you have, which is like, be grateful for what you have, right? Focus on that's how we have happiness in life, I think. So I love that. And I think that's super helpful. Now, you went, like I said, through all these different things: copper, silver, cannabis, and now you're pivoting back into gold. And you seem to have these cycles kind of down in a sense where you were in tech through the boom. Then you exited $1 billion in 2011 in gold, which was the top of the last cycle. For anybody who doesn't know, that's when we had the previous all-time high was in 2011. So perfect there. Obviously the cannabis thing, you got it right, maybe stayed in a little bit long. And now you're pivoting to gold. So I'm guessing you're kind of looking at these like big macroeconomic pictures and you're seeing this trend shape up.
For sure. Absolutely. I mean, I saw that unfortunately, our governments are taking on a lot more debt than I think we can afford to handle. I see some uncertainties that were coming up earlier in the year. And you can see the price of gold was kind of inching up. And obviously we have a good team that's been around that starts to talk to me and say, hey, Mark, you should look at this project, look at that. And even in my own personal portfolio, I manage our family trust and our family's money. And we invest in all the traditional, the bank stocks, big tech. And I'm like, I don't have any exposure to gold. And if things go sideways, I think gold's going to kind of shine here. And then obviously COVID hit, and that kind of fast tracked. We were looking at assets late last year in the first quarter of 2019. And then of course, first quarter of 2020, the whole world went upside down with COVID, which has exacerbated things. And then obviously we stepped in with this gold project in Norsemont, gold silver project. And I think the gold bull market has started, and you've got, Bank of America making predictions of $3,000 gold. Sprott, all the big banks are all targeting $3,000 to $5,000 gold, and bigger gains even on silver. So I think, unfortunately, COVID has put you and I in a bad position for our children and maybe our grandchildren, where the debt our countries have taken on has gone up 9 or 10-fold, which before they were kind of unmanageable. And now I can imagine at 9 or 10-fold, it's beyond unmanageable now. So I think now you've got obviously a big flight to safety and hard assets. And that's where kind of things like crypto, like Bitcoin and silver and gold are seeing a lot of traction and seeing the price appreciation, and a lot of news flow coming out. I mean, Warren Buffett, the guy that is Mr. Anti-Gold, never invest in gold, threw a big stake into a gold company. Eric Sprott, who is a big gold bug, he just announced $1.5 billion that he's going to buy a silver, which is like, wow, that's hot off the presses. And he's been throwing money around in gold sector as well. And he's one of the smarter guys in the gold sector that we all know. So I think, the gold bull market is definitely on, and I think we have a few good years for sure. And we wanted to participate with our investors and protect our investors by exposing them to gold and silver.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of comments that say, I wouldn't buy gold now. It's at all-time highs. And I just think that you're not really seeing the cycles, right? Because yes, it's at all-time high, but it reached its previous all-time high in 2011 at the top of a cycle. And now we're at all-time high kind of at the beginning of a cycle. Right. Do you see the same thing?
No, absolutely. And that's why you get conservative banks even putting out predictions of gold, and they have to be very careful. They're putting out predictions in the 2,500 to 3,500 range. So, we're at an all-time high, but it's not about where we're at today. It's where are we going? And with, with what's going on in the world today, the debt that's been taken on, there's some guys talking about $10,000 and $20,000 gold. Those people are pretty aggressive, maybe a little bit ahead of themselves. But can we see a $3,000 to $5,000 gold price over the next 3+ years? Absolutely. And 90% of the banks say that. So, and that's where you're seeing big bets being made by smart money. I mean, Warren Buffett didn't step into gold when it was $1,200 last year. He was stepping into it this year, near all time. And he's a pretty smart, shrewd investor. I think like you said, we're at the beginning of a cycle here. We have several years in this gold bull market, if not longer. And there's an opportunity to gain exposure through the physical asset or the equities, GLD, one of the ETFs. I mean, there's been $25 billion of flow in from institutions and funds. And these institutions are, sitting on billions and billions of dollars. They got to place it. So they're starting to take exposure at these price points. Yeah. So the smart money is stepping in right now.
Yeah, just stepping in. I mean, it's really been the last 18 months that we've seen the activity, and now the smart money is just kind of coming in. You mentioned one thing that was interesting. So you manage your own family money, your family office or whatever, and you had no exposure to gold. And now you're looked at like, hey, the cycle's coming. We need to get some exposure to gold. You mentioned Rick Rule. I think we were talking offline, and I was listening to Rick Rule as well, and he said that traditionally we'd seen the institutions have about 1.5–2% allocation to gold, but right now it's down about 0.5%. And that just like you, with no allocation to it, most people have less than 0.5%. And then we saw obviously Warren Buffett, but then we saw the Ohio Police and Fire Pension Fund said they're putting 5% towards gold. Yeah. And what happens is once one of them does it, then they all start jumping in, and there's not enough gold for the 5% allocation for everyone.
Correct. It's definitely going to create a little bit of an effect, obviously, where big funds stepping in, following those funds. And like you said, the exposure was very low. So guys are, a lot of these funds get forced into diversifying and stepping into the metals market. So as they grow from 0.5% of their fund towards 1%, 2%, and 5%, and these pension funds step in, the price is going to definitely, based on demand, price is going to move.
Yeah. And then it moves, and then it pulls more people in, right? So, right. Yeah. Now, let's talk about, so you set up the cycle. I love to have your thought process behind that. So I appreciate you sharing that. And so you've gone through all these things. You went from cannabis, and now you realized you didn't have allocation to gold in your own portfolio, your own family office portfolio. But now you also want to move back into it on a business level. And it seems like you'd mentioned earlier, one of your huge successes was a company called Norsemont, and you said it was a 1.0, and now you've launched it as a 2.0. So why don't you kind of fill me in on that?
Sure. So, Norsemont 1.0, we had large copper asset exited, amazing team, amazing asset. And so we maintain the branding, and we think it's got good branding, good following, good pedigree. And we've reassembled some of the team from Norsemont 1.0 that helped create that success. And then we've augmented it with a few other new rock stars to the fold that we can talk about a little later on. And we've acquired this Chilean gold silver asset in northern Chile. It was actually a former producer. And, we've put together, I think, a stronger team than we had before, improved, with a much larger asset that can generate a much larger return as well for our investors. And of course, with a key focus for ourselves being gold and silver at this point in the cycle. And I do like copper, however, but right now I think the exposure we wanted and our investors wanted was gold and silver. It was the right place to be, and it will be, I think, the right place to be for the next several years here.
Yeah. Now, this is a company I've been doing some research on. It's been on my radar because I've been following teams around, and that's how I kind of found it. And it looks like you bought an existing mine that was previously mined by Shell, I think it was, right?
Correct. Yeah. So sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So this asset was mined by Shell and Northgate Minerals. It was the third largest gold producer in Chile and at its time in the early 90s. Made a lot of money for their owners. And obviously through the cycle, they spent a lot of money on the project. And we got an opportunity to acquire this asset that the owner, Copec, which is a very large conglomerate in Chile, was the current owner, and now, of course, we are. So there's a lot of data. We like taking advanced stage projects because we know there's already a resource in the ground, and there's less risk to us to not find something when we already have it there and add value and take it through to a production situation or an exit. If you'd like, I can get into some of the details of the project, but high level.
It sounds like it's kind of the same playbook so you already mentioned your other projects, which was kind of taking existing mines. And so I guess that's what you just said. You like taking existing mines that are kind of already proven and then kind of moving them further, I guess.
Correct. And in this situation, we've got the infrastructure in place. So we've got an existing infrastructure worth over $200 million that was already built for us that we didn't have to pay for, and it's permitted. So it's easy to fast track this project into a production scenario. And back in the early 90s, they were just scratching the surface. They were only mining the gold that was down, 50 to 70 meters. And typically in these systems, these are epithermal gold silver systems, the gold and the silver is down at 250 to 300 meters. So it goes all the way down. So they just kind of took the top part that was easy, mined that, made a bunch of money. Obviously the cycle changed, gold was a couple $100 and kind of, other people took control of it. There was some more mining by Northgate, made money on it. And basically, this project, Copec acquired it, did some work on it, and we kind of had the opportunity to acquire this kind of before this cycle really took off, because they were refocusing their energy on copper. And so we've acquired an asset that has 5.5 million ounces of gold in the ground equivalent. We have gold and silver, existing infrastructure, which is worth about 200 million. There's been 1,700 drill holes, about 130,000 meters of drilling. That's about $50 million of drilling alone in the project. So we're buying all that data and we're paying, pennies on the dollar for that. So we're getting a big discount to market, but we also know that we have today 5.5 million ounces. And as we drill deeper into the project, our target and expectations is to take that up multiple fold. And our geological targeting, about 20 million ounces, we believe is here based on drilling down 3 or 4 times deeper, as well as we've only explored about 20-25% of the project. And there is we've got identified about an 8-kilometer strike, which is the length of the project, where there's another 12 targets. So we believe this project is quite robust. We believe the opportunity to increase this deposit multiple fold. And so we like to have a base that we start from and grow that base. And if I'm wrong and it's not 20 and it's 15 or it's 13 or 11, it's a lot more than we had before. And we de-risk that. And then we get into a situation where a potential mid-tier large cap company would buy us, or we put it into production ourselves. And the beauty is the production cycle takes a long time. And that's the danger. Most of these projects you hear about, they're finding a lot of gold. That's great. But to get a mining permit, water permit, environmental permit, power to the project is a multi-year exercise. We already have all that. I can turn this thing on in 6 months and be producing in this environment and make cash flow. We've got the engineering team. One of our key guys that's new to the team that I talked about, David Lang, he's a mining legend. He's done $25 billion of M&A in the mining sector. He was COO of Quintana Resources, Equinox Gold. He's been on with Bema Gold, Endeavor Financial, Endeavor Mining. Like, these are all mid-tier, large cap mining companies. He worked with Standard Bank. And so he actually put Chocolimpe, our main asset, into production back in '88 for Shell.
Oh, wow. He knows.
So we have the guy, he's done it before. He knows the asset, knows the data. He's an investor in our company. We have him on the team that if we want to put this back into production, who better is there than the guy that's turned it on in the past? Right. So that's quite a unique opportunity. And we've met another gentleman, Bill Katsouras is one of our key directors of our company. He's raised over $4 billion in the mining sector, small, mid cap. He's done a bunch of M&A. He's CFA, CPA. He's one of the key guys behind Endeavor Financial, Endeavor Mining. He's chairman of Wheaton Precious Metals International, which is kind of one of the largest mining companies out there. Certainly. Knows this stuff. So, I mean, and an investor as well. He's put his money into the company. They're all our team has exposure to our stock, and they're investors in our stock and believers in the asset. So we've got a good opportunity here to build out our asset, advance it to a point where it's less risk. And in the next 2 years, we will plan to drill about 50 to 60,000 meters. And then somebody may decide to take us out. And if they don't, we can flip the switch and make a production situation. And we've got a great cash flowing opportunity for our shareholders and create a dividend stock.
Yeah. That's some great information. A lot of that's, I've read about a lot of that stuff in your materials that you have available. And I encourage anybody to do that. As a matter of fact, I'll link to it in the show description so you can go to their website and look at their whole proposal with all their information and whatever. But I'm curious, some questions that aren't in that information, which one, it sounds like you've got this amazing asset for, as you just said, pennies on the dollar. I think it was $10 million of cash and stock for a 200 million asset or whatever. But why would somebody sell the asset that cheap? I mean, they didn't think it was worth the money.
So COPEC is a large conglomerate. They're investing close to $1 billion in a copper project in Peru, actually, that I know well. That'll probably spit out a couple $100 million a year of cash flow, and they do $22 billion in revenues. This was too small for them. And also, at the time we kind of structured the deal, they were exiting gold in Chile and focusing on copper. So they had a shift towards base metals from precious metals. And this asset generate 50 million to their bottom line back when gold was maybe 1,500. So at the time, kind of, it didn't really meet the criteria for them. And obviously they run a very expensive staff and team, and better to use that team on a much larger cash flowing asset. So we stepped in at the right time before gold really ran. We were looking at a couple other of their assets, and this was the best one for that price. And they did participate. I mean, the owners of the asset own stock in our company because they believe in the upside on it. So they didn't just say, hey, there was another bid for all cash. They didn't take that. They took our bid, which was cash and stock. So there was an upside for some of the people involved as well. So that put together.
I like that because that means they didn't just sell you a dud, right? They sold you an asset they believe in as well, which is why they decided to take the stock. If they didn't believe in it, then they just would have taken the cash and just been done, right?
Exactly.
So I like that answer.
Yeah, no, this is what we've done before. We typically approach large mining companies, and they have their thresholds, which are usually set pretty high. And the mid-tier space is much lower than that. So we grab their asset and build it out into a mid-cap mining company and create an exit. So it's what we've done several times before. It works for us. And it also puts together a less risky situation for our investors because there is data. There is an actual asset there. Even if I don't find another ounce of gold and I go and do some drill work and take this asset to 43,101, depending on which analyst and bank you follow, they might value gold in the ground at $50, $75, $100. We have an asset here that can support, a $300 to $500 million market cap, which would put our stock at, $8 or $10 price point. That's if we don't find another ounce of gold and we just prove up what we actually have and bring it up to, more the 43,101 standards, more recent standards, right? So, yeah.
Now, just for those that aren't familiar, I want to fill this gap a little bit. So, in the mining sector, you kind of have like the major producers, the minor producers, and then kind of the explorers. And right now, especially with the pandemic, I mean, physical gold is like a massive shortage globally, right? I mean, you have to pay massive premiums to get physical. And so it seems like there's not enough gold being produced. And that might be because some are shut down because of COVID, or maybe there's just too much demand. So you kind of have these major producers, and then you have the kind of minor producers and explorers. And those are the ones that are ripe for being taken over by the majors so they can get more gold into the market. Is that kind of how it works?
Sure. No, that's exactly the case. And that's why we're here. We believe that there's going to be a cycle of M&A activity, mergers, acquisition activity, because a lot of the bigger gold miners, I mean, A, they're running out of the product that they're mining. B, for the last decade, there's been no money put into exploration work. So there's not been a lot of new discoveries for them to acquire. So we do believe there will be a little bit of not a panic, but we believe there will be a huge M&A activity over the next 12, 24 months. And we think that we'll be well positioned. By that time, we'll prove out our deposit and we'll be in a position to create an exit for our investors, which we've done before. Everybody likes to talk about an exit, but we've done it. We know what we're doing. And the beauty is, if we don't get that exit and gold's moving, I mean, typical cash costs in South America and Chile is about $850 an ounce. Gold sitting at $1,500 an ounce. we're making money hand over fist. 2,000, 2,500, it's almost too good to be true, and the profit margins would be significant. So we do have the ability to turn this on. If we don't find the right buyer, we will go into production and generate cash flow for our investors. So we have a win either which way. And I think that's kind of why we like this asset quite a bit. And we see this being a much lower risk situation for our investors with a big payback.
What are the risks?
Well, the risks are that gold price, if you don't believe gold's, if you think gold's going to go sub 1,000, that could impact a project like this. But I don't think that's going to happen, maybe not even in our generation, but I don't think that's going to happen over the next decade at least. And a lot of the gold projects that you see out there, they use feasibility study prices of $1,300 to $1,400 range. So your project needs to be feasible at $1,350 to be considered financeable and profitable. And our project would be, our cash costs would be $850, $900. So at $1,350, $1,400, we'd be making money. So I mean, for our situation, it's the only thing that could happen is really gold prices dipping below that threshold where no one would fund a production situation.
So you're past the exploration phase. So you're not, the risk of not finding gold isn't really there.
No, we're a brownfields asset, so we're advanced stage. There is gold there. Geologically, there is more gold there. I mean, I would go on the record here. If I don't find any more gold, maybe I gotta throw in the towel and call it a day. Like, there's definitely a lot more gold here. How much there is, God's going to determine that, my geologists. But realistically, there's a lot more gold based on the modeling that we have and our geological knowledge and data and our engineering. How much there is, that's what we want to prove up, and that's where we want to spend, $25 million, drill out the project. And whether we double, triple, or quadruple the size, there will be more, which is great because that makes us more susceptible to being acquired by a major because we have a bigger resource and a longer lifespan in our mine and hopefully higher grades as well. Yeah. So for us, we don't see a lot of risk in this project outside of, things that we can't control. Force majeure, COVID could shut the world down. But I think, we're learning to adapt and we've changed. People are taking precautions and measures. There's talk about vaccines and treatments, but that'll take time. But I think that, COVID are things like act of God that we can't really control. But the price of gold in the environment we're in.
Yeah. What about political risk? So there's a big narrative that's being pushed. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but this whole mining in countries that don't have dollar swap lines with the U.S. And there's a narrative that, there's an extra risk because of that. I'm sure you're familiar with that. Sure. What's the political risk in Chile?
So Chile is the number one global copper producer in the world. So they're very mining centric, mining friendly. Their GDP is dependent on mining. The government understands mining. They're a top 10 Fraser Institute for investment. So they're in the top 10 countries to invest in mining. So they're a pretty stable country. They're dependent on mining. We don't see it internally as a risk, but of course, even mining in the United States or Canada carries some risk as well. Sure. So that could be somewhat of a risk, but on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd call the risk 1. It's very low risk situation politically there because their country wouldn't survive without mining and the revenues it generates.
Sure. Okay. That makes sense. Now, you've managed to move through these cycles. We talked about from tech to copper to silver to cannabis, now to gold. I'm just curious. I get asked quite a bit, and I haven't really been paying attention to it. So that's why I want to ask a mining expert here about uranium.
Sure.
I did a recent video talking about going to renewable energy. And it seems like uranium is maybe our only chance. And it seems very hated right now, probably because of Fukushima and whatever. In your mining circles and the cycles that you're looking at, what do you think about that?
So I'm not an expert in uranium, but I am a big believer in the space. I do believe we need clean, renewable energy. I think there's some challenges with wind power having to be subsidized, solar power having to be subsidized. I think we're not there yet. But, it's unfortunate what happened with Fukushima, and that kind of set the world upside down on uranium. But I don't see us escaping it. And like you said, it's down and out. And I think because of our conversation, I bought a few years ago talking to Rick Rule. He kind of thought uranium was beat up and good time to buy. I did buy some. And based on our discussions today, I'm going to kind of re-educate myself in the space and look at putting some money in there, because I don't think as a society in Western world, I don't think we can get away from uranium. Right now, that's the cleanest, easiest, renewable energy, low cost. The price point of uranium is, fallen off the map. But I do think that could be a big comeback hit here. Yeah. It might be a bit early, but I do think that there's no ways around the uranium market. I'm a big believer in uranium.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of agreeing exactly with you. I think it might still be a little bit early. I know in California we've shut down 2, and we have 1 more nuclear reactor running, but it's scheduled to be shut down. And then Germany's been shutting down their nuclear reactors. So it seems like we're still almost downtrending from it. So maybe we need to kind of wait for that bottom. Maybe it's a little early.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's why I was asking your opinion. So I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, no, you're probably bang on there. Maybe it's a bit too soon, but sometimes investing a bit too soon, like the Warren Buffett principle, when nobody wants it, it may not be a bad time to buy it.
Yeah, I'm in Southern California. I'm a surfer, so I typically like to try to ride the waves. I don't try to create the waves. So I'll wait for the wave to show up and then I'll hop on it.
Oh, that's smart.
Not a professional knife catcher, as they say.
Yes.
Now we also talked about tech. Obviously you worked and kind of lived and worked through that 97, 98 internet boom. So you get the tech cycles and all that. I know you met Vitalik Buterin and had the chance for Ethereum. Yeah. I'm curious, as a gold guy, what do you think about Bitcoin?
Sure. I see Bitcoin has been doing very well over the last year. I think it is a store of wealth, and it easily movable. The younger generation, like our kids, for example, that are more tech savvy than we think we're tech savvy. They're earlier adopters to cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. So I do believe that you're seeing a flight to safety, and part of that is, gold and silver is more of the old school guys, and I think the younger generations, crypto, and even guys like you and I probably own some crypto as well. Yeah. Besides our kids, so I think Bitcoin is probably a great store of wealth, and that's why it's getting a lot of traction over the course of the last little while here. And so I think you can put that in the same category as gold and silver as well.
Yeah.
The finite amount of Bitcoin out there, and people are not wanting to hold currencies all around the world. So
yeah, it's interesting. You talk about the different generations. I've kind of thrown out, like, my grandparents would never own Bitcoin, and my grandkids would probably never own gold. You kind of have these generations as it shifts. And then I think also I heard yesterday some polls, and they were talking about how it was talking about this upcoming U.S. presidential election cycle, and they're talking about the polls that were ran on people's distrust of the media and people's distrust of the government. And they're both at like record highs. Like, I think it's like a 20% approval rating of media and government. And I think that leads to obviously also not trusting the government, not trusting the money, the banking system. And then people want to buy gold and Bitcoin, right?
No, for sure. And I think that fortunately the United States and Canada, their currencies are well regarded, and, they're printing currencies as they need it, but other countries couldn't do anything like that. So, and I think a lot of people have, like you said, there is big mass distrust of what's going on, media manipulation, governments. There's a lot of frustration around the world, and people are a little scared. People don't know what's going on, and COVID has really created a big curveball for all that. And I think, I think it makes sense to different generations storing their wealth in different mediums. You know, for you and I, we're kind of, like you said, caught in the middle. Our gold and silver is great, and Bitcoin's great. But good point you made is like our grandkids, it's like, what's gold? What's silver? It's going to be, you know, stored in crypto. Everything will be on their phones, I guess.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, man, what a great conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time that you have just to kind of walk through that with me. And, man, I love the perspective that you've shared. So thank you so much. I'm going to link to, I'll link to the Norsemont company information if anybody wants to see that. So I'll link to that in the show. Is there anywhere else they should go to follow you? I don't know if you're on social media or anywhere else you want to?
I'm not as active on social media as I should be. I mean, I've got a LinkedIn account, and then, you know, I've got Instagram because I'm forced by my kids and family. But really, you know, at norsemontmining.com, our website has data on our company. And obviously you can go on to either Yahoo or Bloomberg or Stockwatch or any of those and enter our ticker symbol, and take a look at the company. You'll probably put together that information.
Now that was well, actually that leads me to one more question as I was wrapping it up. Sorry, but so right now it's like an OTC stock, like a pink sheet, right?
We're listed on the OTCQB,
okay,
under NRRSF, and we're also listed on the Canadian Stock Exchange as NOM, which was the original NOM ticker symbol for Norsemont that I sold 1.0.
Oh, nice.
So we have the same name, same ticker symbol, even in Canada. So it's quite well recognized. Yeah. And we are planning to list the company on a more senior exchange. Our CFO, Coolwant, that I didn't talk about, typically does NASDAQ deals. So he's working towards getting us listed on the NASDAQ because we think that's a better audience for us, better access to capital, better liquidity. So we are planning to move to that more senior exchange this year. Okay. So
yeah, that was going to be my question. So, I mean, you started talking about, you know, doing some mining and it wouldn't be that hard to get the stock up to $7-8 a share. I'm just curious, at what point does that, you know, penny stock, OTC stock jump onto an exchange? Is somewhat of it dependent on how big the market cap is?
There's a couple of different criteria. In Canada, it doesn't have such a price barrier or market cap barrier so much because where we're at right now, we're sitting at about 100 million. Typically for the NASDAQ, the minimum is $4 US typically. So we have to see our stock trading at about $4 US from where we are today. I think we're at about $1.80 US. And I think that, you know, based on the drilling that we're about to embark on and some of the work and news that's going to come out, and getting the word out through people like yourself, I really appreciate it. We really haven't told the story. It's been more internal people, value-added people investing alongside us and some very close funds to ourselves. So we're just starting to get the word out to the retail, as well as daily I'm doing institutional meetings where they're coming into the market. So you can see our prices moving up a little bit, our liquidity is increasing. So as we get traction and people realize, wait a second here, this is worth a hell of a lot more than it's trading at, and they figure out the reasons why. So I think we're getting a bit of market traction here, and you know, hopefully we'll get our share price up, and I think we plan to be listed on the NASDAQ before the end of the year.
Nice. That's awesome. That's good news. Well, I'll definitely be rooting for you and watching, and I'll stay in touch. It was so great. I appreciate you taking the time today.
Yeah, I appreciate you exposing me, and definitely look forward to giving you updates and for you to follow up, and feel free anytime to ask me any questions. I'd love to come back on your show and provide an update after we get some work done here.
All right, Mark. Thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
Perfect. Thanks a lot.